Welcome everyone to our third session in the Shamanic Workshop with Gwilda Wiyaka, and today is the Shamanic Ceremony as a tool for conscious manifestation. Gwilda, it has been so wonderful being with you for this whole series, and I'm so looking forward to what you have in store for us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm really looking forward to sharing this part. This is when we bring it all together and actually perform the ceremony, and a ceremony that you can then modify and to serve any purpose throughout your lifetime. So I love this particular portion of teaching and of the class, which brings us to our first subject. What exactly is ceremony? But for starters, every shaman is truly a frequency master. And for millennia, the shamanic ceremony has enabled the practitioner to consciously use their chakric system to manage matter or frequency at the quantum level. And in this last class, we're going to be performing a basic shamanic ritual that's like a template for a lot of different shamanic rituals that you can then build from it. That's why, like I said, this is one of my favorite parts of the class. So shamanic ceremony is the cornerstone of all shamanic practices. It's a method of accessing the power of nature. It's a vehicle for focusing your personal power, and by bonding individual and group agreement and intent with the power of natural law. The power of ceremony. Now, ceremony is only as clear and powerful as the intent and agreement of the participants or participants. Ceremony is used to focus your intent, and through cooperation with natural law, ceremony empowers that intent. And that's why it's so important to be conscious when we're doing ceremony, as conscious as we can be. We all have varying degrees of it, varying times in our lives. So when performing a ceremony, it's paramount to follow the 5 basic laws of ethical shamanic practice. So all responsible ceremony is practiced with integrity and strictly adheres to these 5 basic laws of shamanic practice. And just in case you guys have forgotten them the last week, shaman works within natural law. Shamanism is not practiced without permission. Shamanism does not impose energy where it does not belong. Shamanism does not take energy away from where it does belong. And shamanism does no harm. Now we're going to go a little deeper into these concepts because it is so important to keep them in mind when performing ceremony, because that keeps us clean and out of trouble. So working within the natural law. Nature flows in cyclic and predictable ways. Practicing without permission is to work against natural law. Attempting to bend natural law in order to work our will is another practice of sorcery. Using the powers of natural law to break sovereignty of person, place, or thing is working with, is breaking the natural law. The price of sorcery, which is breaking natural law, among other things, is pretty high because we're working against the way life works. And if you think about it, it's not too hard to figure out who's the larger in that equation. You can do it for a while, but eventually there's going to be quite a backlash. And be gentle with ourselves and each other because we all practice sorcery. That's the way of the 4th world. Sorcery is the way of the old way that we've been in. And so now, stepping into the 5th world, stepping into conscious use of power is part of the path. And so it's not a matter of having never practiced sorcery or not catching ourselves doing it. The whole point is catching ourselves doing and making the correction. That act of catching ourselves in the process, understanding what we've been doing, and making the correction is what changes the world. The next law has to do with permission. Permission is never assumed. You don't ask a question about another without permission, no matter how well intended. That's violating their personal space. We can only consult spirit as what is ours to do in regards to another. That way we're asking the question about ourselves, not the other person. It's not up to us to decide what's right for another. We don't have the big picture. Sometimes we think we do, but ultimately there's no way we have the big picture. And so we're making an assumption based on our little telescopic view, microscopic view of what's really going on for another person's life. We can only choose what we want our life to look like, but not if it involves another without specific permission. So say, for instance, I can say, I'd like to be in a conscious, loving relationship, But I can't say I would like to be in a conscious, loving relationship with Joe. Maybe Joe doesn't want to participate in a conscious, loving relationship with me, so that would be imposing my intent on him. It's very easy to slide across the lines when we're dealing with husbands, wives, family members, because there's so much enmeshment there. But if we can keep it clean, even with those closest to it, it makes it easier to keep it clean with those further away. It also takes pressure off of our relationships. Prayer is an example of imposing energy without permission. If we do not have permission to pray for a person, we simply don't do it because, like I said before, the good news about prayer is it really works, and the bad news about prayer is it really works. And if we're practicing without permission, even prayer becomes sorcery. It just really is paramount to trust in every person's path. We don't know what they're choosing to do while they're here, what service they're providing, no matter what it looks like from the outside. Imposition of energy. I love this picture. He's very imposing, isn't he? Imposition of energy. Energy is imposed every time we attempt to work our personal will on another. Even if it appears our agenda would be better for that person than their own, imposition of any emotion, even love, where it's not wanted or received is inappropriate. Bleeding heart compassion is inappropriate and is an imposition of energy. In other words, pity versus sympathy. We can be sympathetic with the person's stance or what they're going through, but when we pity them and try to fix it, then we're stepping over the line. Projection is an imposition of energy. In other words, you make me feel, or if you wouldn't have, then I, those kind of things. Those are projection of what's going on with us into another person's space, and that's an imposition of energy. And judgment of another person or their path is an imposition of energy. We're imposing our judgment, the frequency of our judgment, the frequency of our life onto them. Energy theft. Drawing attention to ourselves and away from the purpose is to steal the energy of a group or an individual. We see all this all the time in grade school, but you know it doesn't stop there. We see it all the time, everywhere. As you get a group of people together, energy is naturally built, even though it's unconscious. And there's very often people within the group that will try to draw that energy themselves because that's the only way they know of feeling powerful or feeding or getting energy, but it's actually energy theft. Manipulating emotion from another is another good way of energy theft. In other words, if I can get you to feel sorry enough for me, maybe you'll do what I want you to do. Or if I can get you to respect me or see me as more important or more powerful than you, then I can manipulate your behavior. All of those are sorcery. Manipulating an action from another that's not their choice is to steal energy for your own purpose. And the examples I just gave are also examples of that. I have a friend who likes to fulfill everybody's needs. And so I could say to her, if I wasn't conscious of it, I could say to her, I would just state a need. I wouldn't ask her to do it. All I would have to do is state a need and how I'm a victim of not having that need fulfilled. And she would immediately jump to do what I needed her to do versus what was in her best interest to do or what was hers to do at any given time. Once I recognized that tendency in her, we would both speak about it aloud, and I recognized a tendency in me to speak my needs without asking for them. So we had to work with that so that I wasn't manipulating her and she wasn't subject to my manipulation. Obsessive attachment to another is a form of energy theft. We are so obsessed with the actions, the activities, what another person is doing that actually is pulling energy from that person by our attention, riding on their frequency. Claiming another's work as our own, whether it's physical work or ideas or whatever, is another form of energy theft. And of course, do no harm. It's so important that what we do when we're working with shamanic ceremony does not bring harm to another. And again, we've talked about how harm is relative. Sometimes what we're doing is creating chaos where the order that's been established is damaging in our lives. So that's not exactly what I mean by harm. Chaos and harm are two different things. To violate the laws of nature takes power from where it belongs and imposes it elsewhere. And this is another form of energy theft, but this also does harm. You're taking power away from where it belongs and imposing it elsewhere. Say, for instance, there is a shamanic ceremony by which we can shift weather patterns. If we don't do journey first to find out if, somebody's going to languish for moving the rain from one place to another, we could be doing harm. So doing the ceremony and asking the powers that be, i.e. the rain and the earth, are you getting a little bit too much water over there? Would you mind sending a little our way? So those kind of things when people are doing the ceremony, and that's why it's always been traditional to do ceremony with permission from the elements as well as from the people we're doing the ceremony with. It's also an imposition of energy if you are doing harm. You're imposing on someone else. This also creates harm. In other words, harm, the way I'm trying to define it here, means to alter a person, the frequency of a person, place, or thing to their detriment. In the end, these actions end up harming someone or someone, no matter how good the intentions. As we learn the shamanic way, we're learning to work within the laws of nature. It's vital that we're mindful not to violate them. And sometimes it's really easy to overlook where we actually violate the laws of nature on a daily basis. To practice shamanism increases our personal power by aligning it with the laws of nature. Pristine ethics are vital because this increase in power increases results. And if what we are intending is violating one of those laws, the result is not going to work long term for anyone concerned. Okay, one of the important parts of ceremony is setting intent, and we talked about what is our intent. Intent must be in agreement with the 5 laws of ethical shamanic practice before you engage it into ceremony. So that's a good rule to run it by. You write your intent down and then you look at it and go, am I violating anything here of these 5 laws with this intent I'm starting to set? And if so, how can I alter the intent in order to stay within those 5 basic laws? All participants of the ceremony must be in conscious and willing agreement of said intent. Now, that can be very interesting because we aren't in conscious and willing agreement with ourselves, much less each other most of the time, because there's so much of us in denial or in unconsciousness. So I say this is an absolute, but it's a target. It's not where you've arrived. It's a target destination. So to the best of our ability at any given time, we are in conscious agreement with the intent of ceremony, with ourselves and with each other. So like we can all sit down and say, let's do this ceremony for world peace. Well, that's imposing peace on a world that may or may not want it. What's the world to start out with? And how do we define peace? So even the simplest intents really need to be closely examined so that we know that we're not violating laws and that we're all in agreement. The agreed upon purpose of the class ceremony that we're doing now, and all the ones I do with Path Home, is to build a safe, high-frequency environment in order to promote spiritual healing. So the baseline agreement for the ceremony that we perform today is to create a safe, high-frequency environment to promote spiritual healing. Within that, the sub-intent is whatever intent you bring to the table for your manifestation. So we're working on various levels here. Your manifestation will not be backed by the group, but the creation of an environment where your manifestation can be backed by you is being created by the group ceremony. Now, intention. Intention is the power that drives manifestation. Most of our personal intention is unconscious, like I've mentioned. We feel powerless, so we never consciously set our intention into motion. So that's interesting. We feel powerless, so we never set our intention into motion. Why would that be? Well, if we don't think we have any power, it never occurs to us to use it. Okay? I remember one time I was sitting down and visiting with a friend, and she was laying out this problem that she had. And I said, well, why don't you just change your approach to it? And she says, what do you mean? I said, well, instead of being victimized by feeling that you are in lack, why don't you look at what you do have and decide how to move what you do have to fill the perceived lack? And she sat there for a minute, and then it's like these lights came on for her. So she had everything she needed at hand to create what she wanted to, but she didn't know that she had the power to move it around in order to do so. Intention directs the frequency of our chakras, enables them to manifest change at the quantum level. So that's another power function of intention. Power of the function of intention is that if we set our intent, it literally shifts what chakras operate how and why in order to shift the frequency at the quantum level. And it's what we call involuntary. In other words, it happens by setting intent. We don't have to think of which chakras to shift. Just like I'm alive, my heart's beating. I don't have to count the cadence or the rhythm to stay alive. The key, of course, is finding true intention. Mostly we're creating solutions for perceived problems, and that's why we went through the why exercise when we were working with our personal intent for this next class here. Then we go back to bottom line. When setting intent to manifest or achieve something, it's vital to come from a very clear bottom line. The bottom line is what you are or not willing to experience at this time. It's our bottom line, conscious and unconscious, that drives the manifestation in our lives. In other words, there's very many places I've found over the years in myself where I am very opposed to something and I think, I don't care what it takes, I'm not going back there again. But I made that decision, set it on default, and never re-examined it, and it became an unconscious bottom line. So that's an example of how our bottom lines can be unconscious. Later in life, going there would be very important to achieve what I want to, and wouldn't bring the same damage that it did the last time, but because I've never recognized I'm carrying it as a bottom line, I don't think to re-examine it and let it go. If you don't like what's showing up in your life, it's always really important to re-examine your bottom line, because that's really setting the stage for what you bring to you or push away. That's what the bottom line functions as. And like I said, we all got all these backlog of bottom lines that we set in motion and never re-examine. Conscious working of your bottom line takes you out of the passenger seat and puts you in the driver's seat of your life. Again, this has all been review. Everybody still good?
We do have a question from Lynn, and that is, as we are learning to put the safety lock on our loaded guns of creation, how do we deal with the bullets from all those unaware people?
Very well put. My default setting on that is my own process. We're only targets for the bullets where we're damaged or wounded. A whole or healthy toroidal field naturally fields those projectiles from hitting our space. The only way they can hit our space is where they get in. And so that's how I own my own stuff. In other words, it may be very unjust what's coming at me, but I can bet it's coming at me because I have a weakness and I'm vulnerable to it. And so I dive in and try to find my weakness, where my vulnerability is, heal that imbalance in my toroidal field, and then I'm no longer a target of those particular bullets. So the bullets in that way are transmuted into a very true blessing in that they show me where my weakness is so I can shore it up and not be vulnerable in the future. Any other questions?
Yes, there was one back on doing no harm. Let's see, what did she say? If you're asking for the highest good of this person, let's say doing somebody sick in the hospital. I know you gave that example where you went and journeyed, and he said he didn't want to be healed because he was ready to go. But if you didn't know that, if you could just do a ceremony for the well-being of Joe for his highest good, would that be doing harm?
The key here is permission, okay? And then also define highest, because that's an absolute, that's a polarized concept. So highest good, if we define it in such a way that we're turning it back over, let this ceremony support their chosen path.
Yes,
say, for
okay.
instance. Given that it doesn't fall with it, given that that doesn't cause me to violate the 5 basic laws. So there you're pretty safe. But highest requires spirit to make a value judgment, and we found that oftentimes doesn't work so well. So that's the way I manage that. And again, I have to have Joe's permission in order to do that ceremony. Oh, that makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We good?
We're good.
All right. I like it when we're good. Okay, the steps of ceremony. First, we set intent. Second, we clear the space by smudging the sage. Third, we clear the participants and ourselves. And we always start with ourselves first, always work from within outward. Just like I was saying, the way I keep from dodging bullets people are unconsciously throwing around is by looking within and saying, where am I vulnerable to that? So always start within and then work out. Clear the sacred objects, such as drums, rattles, and all those to bring to class as items that I said. Then we clear the items as we set them on the altar. So we clear and set the altar. And I'll demonstrate all of this for you or speak about it while you do it. We call on the directions through prayer. We light the altar and state it has begun by lighting the altar. I don't mean set fire to the whole thing. You just light the candle on the altar. I had someone call me on that once. No, 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 don't burn the altar. That's cremation. We save that for another ceremony altogether. Then you perform the ceremony, whatever it is, whether it's reading your intent or in this case, I perform class. Okay, so I set this whole thing up every time I teach a class. Then I perform the class. Okay. At the end of class, we give gratitude and release the spirit. So at the end of you stating your intent, and that's moving through the ceremony, is very important to step 9, which is give gratitude and release the spirits that we've called in. Then we blow out the candle and state it is ended. So it's very important to have a very clear delineation of when we begin and when we end. And that way we don't bleed our intent that we have for this powerful time when we're doing ceremony into times when we may be less conscious of what we're doing. Where we slip back into the, workaday world and cut somebody because they cut us off. Sometimes road rage, we don't want that back by the ceremony that we've been doing just an hour before. So that's why we're very mindful in ceremony, so we can drop back into being human, do the best we can, but not be carrying such a wallop that what we do carries so much impact. Is that pretty clear for everyone?
Yes. Yes. Sylvia had a question back on permission, and that is, how do you ask for permission?
How do you ask for permission from another person or from, let's address that first. So say, for instance, Robin, if you told me that yesterday was your birthday, go figure. Okay? And I said, that's really exciting, Robin. Would you mind if I do ceremony to support you in the next part of your life, to send support for you for the rest part of your life? I just simply ask you. And you might say, well, what would that ceremony look like? And I would say something along the lines of, well, what do you want it to look like? Okay, what would you like? So we could sit down and discuss back and forth what you would and wouldn't like me to include in that ceremony. Okay, or say, for instance, I have a friend that's sick. Say they don't understand shamanism. Say they would be terrified by my saying, oh, can I do ceremony? Can I, do a ritual on your behalf? But if I simply say to them, can I send my prayers your way? And if they give me permission, then I can send a power animal their way to do whatever best supports their path at this time, given their intent and bottom line. So that's different ways that we can ask permission. There's places where permission is assumed. So if a person comes to me and wants me to design their house, and I do interior design, they want me to design their house. They aren't asking me to show them all of my credentials. They aren't asking me to say how many materials I've worked with or how many houses I've designed. They're counting on me to use all of the skills that I have at hand in order to help them design their house in a way that they'll be comfortable with it and be happy living there. So far, so good? Mm-hmm. So in that case, I can journey and ask, given this person's intent and bottom line, what are the best products for me to bring, or what are the most appropriate products for me to bring to offer to them at this time from what I have on hand? Given the location of this person's house, how can I best support their living in it with the design materials I have on hand? So I have been given permission by them asking me. The fact that I happen to use journey work in order to enhance my ability to give them what they've asked for, they don't care. So it doesn't matter. You see what I'm trying to say? Doesn't bring a bunch of stuff. So we could actually do it that way. It's again, like when I work with people, when I was a massage therapist, I'm always getting information, and it would be coming through the shamanic channels. I could feel in my body where their pain was. I would follow that pain and work on them. That's not working without permission, because what they've done is they've come to me and given me permission to use my skills, regardless of where they came from, on their behalf. Mm-hmm. That flesh it out a little bit?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, what you will need. We've had this out there to nauseam, but of course you're going to start out needing your sage and your container to burn it in. Feather fan is optional. We can always use our hands. You'll need an altar cloth. Square is great. Rectangular is fine. A compass or a way of discerning direction so that you can set your altar up with the electromagnetic field of the Earth. So don't go out and look for the North Star. Probably wouldn't have much luck right now anyway, unless you're in Australia, huh? Okay. A candle and a candle holder. So even if the candle comes in a glass container like this one does, have a holder underneath it because one represents the masculine and the other the feminine. Then you need something to mark the 4 directions. And the colors we're going to use today are yellow, red, black, and white. Later you might develop your own practice, and that's fine. An earthen bowl to represent earth and to hold water for the element water. And then a instrument of percussion, so something that rattles outside of your head, okay? Heads don't work that way. You can't shake them that much. And I presume everybody's brought all their goodies to class. Did you guys have fun collecting them? I really have fun collecting them. And it's amazing how many I've already had or meant something to me in my life. I just walk around my house and I remember buying that. Little did I know it was going to be for this purpose. So again, let's start out with the sage. Why do we use sage? Well, sage is traditionally used in this part of the world by the native people here to clear and purify. Why? Well, 1, it was at hand. 2, sage as an herb actually purifies the blood. It balances hormones, so it's balancing and purifying. So we're working within its natural constituents, within its natural expression. So that's probably why sage was originally chosen to serve that purpose here. It's certainly not the only one. Copal is used in India. Incense is used in various places. You see incense used in the Catholic Church. So purifying through smudging and through smoke is found in just about every tradition. What you use to do that, I journey and ask, okay, given that I'm going to do a ceremony about such and such, what's the best option for me? Sometimes I'm shown flat cedar is what I need to use. I'm often shown to use flat cedar when I'm performing sweat lodge when I start the sweat lodge. So it's really pungent and very piercing and really helps to clear. But I've cleared the entire lodge itself before I start with sage. All of this I get through journey work. And what I'm journeying to is the situation at hand and to find which of what I have on hand is going to be the best for the purpose. I recommend sage because it's pretty universal, and particularly if you're practicing in my part of the world, in the Americas, it's very readily available and has been used for generations for this purpose. Why do I use a shell? Well, again, it's been traditionally used. The traders the Native American traders started carrying these shells all over the continent to do trade with, and they have been traditionally used for carrying and burning sage for generations. And so it carries that power. But if you don't happen to have an abalone shell, not to worry. You can use an earthen bowl or anything that doesn't catch fire when you try to burn sage in it. We simply bless it to its purpose, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This feather fan I made from a snow goose wing that was harvested by one of my students. Lovely man. He learned to hunt and procure in a good way. He would call in the animal that didn't want to winter another year and dispatch it kindly and use every bit of it and give prayer and gratitude and bury the heart, and it was just beautifully done. So I know that it's been handled in a good way to start out with. Now, we can journey back, and that's one of the things I teach in my classes on how to craft shamanic articles, but we can journey back to the animal and ask its permission to use its wing and give gratitude for it and all that stuff. And this is how we create sacred objects, is we give gratitude for where they came from, then we shift and bless it to its purpose. And then I built the fan, again, doing the same thing with all the objects that I used to build the fan with. So this fan has been created in a sacred and ceremonial way, and I've used it for years and years and years in class. However, our hand can serve the same purpose. We can just, use our hand with the intent that we're moving this to clear the air. So clearing the space. This is a picture of our friend Trixie, and she's clearing the space in what was my living room to change it from being a living room to being a space to hold class and ceremony. So it's not like we're chasing out evil spirits. And it's really, really important to remember that. And we'll get into that in a minute. So what she's doing here is she's burning the sage, so there's smoke. She's asking permission of the sage and giving gratitude to it to be burned for this purpose. So we talk to the sage. We actually talk to the sage. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your sacrifice. And you know, please help me clear this space. Again, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Now the purpose is the issue here. It's not that there's evil spirits in my living room particularly, but rather it's been used as a living room. That was its last purpose. And now we're shifting its purpose in order to be a sanctuary to hold class in. That's a different frequency. So we're simply clearing the old frequency to make space for the new. And we do it with loving intent. It's perfectly fine for this room to be a living room when that's what we're using it for. So we lovingly remove this frequency or shift the frequency, the living room frequency, into classroom frequency. And that's why I say we aren't trying to get rid of evil spirits. This is one of the things that's happened over the years as we get more dogmatic with the shamanic practice, is things are good and bad, right and wrong. We're getting rid of the bad mojo. You know, we're chasing out the bad spirits. No, we're just shifting frequency. Because if you think of it as chasing out bad spirits, you're actually polarizing, creating a lower frequency in the room yourself. So it's counterproductive at very least, and inaccurate as well. Another principle that we use here in this country that actually is reversed in Australia is we go clockwise to build energy and we move counterclockwise to remove energy, to break it down. So as we sage in the rooms on this side of the world, we go counterclockwise because we're taking out the old frequency that's not going to serve its purpose. When we build the energy back in the world, then we work clockwise. A lot of the Aboriginal customs work just exactly the opposite way. Simply, well, heck, the toilet flushes the other direction there, okay? Everything works a little bit different. So what I find is a really good rule of thumb is each of us has particular wiring. Whether we were born in Australia or we moved to Australia might dictate whether counterclockwise or clockwise is going to work best with our wiring. So it's not just about the planet where you are, but also about your wiring. You can go either direction if your intent is that you're clearing. You're going to be clearing. Any questions about clearing?
So you would go, let's say, counterclockwise first to clear the space, and then clockwise to build up the frequency for the new intent.
Exactly. So say, for instance, if I was using sage to clear the old intent, I would walk around the room in a counterclockwise direction, getting all the corners. And that's important about saging as a room. You go around the outside and you get all the corners and up close to the ceiling. And I like to move towards the direction where I have a door or a window open. And then I spiral into a circle into the center of the room. And as a rule, I have the altar set up in the center of the room. Then, if I were going to have the group drum and dance in a circle to build power in the room, to build the frequency for class, what I would do then is I would have them drum and walk in a clockwise direction. So we're building energy there. Likewise, when my drum has been built in a sacred manner, so it's actually a power tool. And when I'm getting ready to drum, before I first drum, I actually run my drumstick or my hand around the drum counterclockwise. And that's to open the drum or to remove the seal that I put on the drum. When I'm done drumming for the ceremony, then I'll move my hand around in a clockwise manner, or my drumstick, to seal the drum. And the purpose behind that is because the drum is built in the sacred way, on the sacred 7 directions, in the way that my Lakota teacher taught me. It is a power tool. And if it's just sitting around, a child might want to pick it up and hit it. And if I have it sealed, that's not an issue, because then it's just wood and hide. It's no longer a power tool. So it's been sealed so that it's no longer its power, or its sacred geometry is no longer accessible by someone that would unwittingly pick it up and just try to play a mambo beat on it, okay? So those are examples of how we use these principles. Okay, clearing yourself from others. Again, we start with ourselves before we clear anything else. And then while I'm clearing things, if I find my mind wandering, or I find judgment sliding in, or I find a little angst, I'll clear myself again. It's an ongoing process. So again, we burn sage. We ask permission of the sage, and we ask permission of the other person. Would you like me to clear you? Okay? We set our intent. Now, what is our intent when we're clearing ourselves? And what do we advise others to be their intent? Well, we're trying to set aside, leave out in the front stoop if you want, or the public thoroughfare, all of our self-judgment, all of the frequencies that would not serve this purpose that we're engaging in. But you're welcome to pick them up on your way out. Some of them we're so happy not to have that people just leave them on the doorstep and I clear them when the class is over. But other things we need in our day-to-day life, it just doesn't necessarily belong in the circle that we're sitting in to do sacred work. So our intent is to simply set aside the things that will not serve or be served by the ceremony that we're about to engage in. And we're in agreement with ourselves, with the sage, and with each other, what the purpose is. Again, that's why that agreement is so important, so that then the purpose is being served. We know what we're setting, why we're setting things aside, and therefore we can be very specific without having to be conscious of what we're setting aside. And that's the beauty of it, is you don't have to know what it is. If you set your intent to simply set aside that which will not serve or be served, it's going to happen. And then, of course, the most important thing is gratitude. We're grateful for these things that we're setting aside. They're part of us and part of our lives. We're grateful also that we can set them aside in order to work in this environment in a good way. We're grateful for the person that's saging us. We're grateful for the sage that's helping clear us. Gratitude is the activator of all things. The next step is to clear your sacred objects. So I've cleared the room. I've cleared the table or the floor space, again with sage, where I'm going to set up my altar. So the next step I take is I clear the sacred objects. Now, I personally like to have the sage burning to the side and clear each object as I set it on the altar. There's various ways of doing this, but that's my particular style. And the reason I do it this way is I'm being very conscious of each item to bless it to its purpose. So I clear it from its old purpose, and then I bless it to its purpose. So say, for instance, I bless the altar cloth to holding the earth of the issue. So I'll, sage it, and then I'll set it down with a compass and arrange it to where it's facing the direction I want. And I bless it to being the earth, the grounding for the altar. So that's the reason I do it that way. Some people like to clear them all ahead of time and then put them on each in their turn. There's no right or wrong. It's just what's most comfortable for you. So orienting the altar. The altar cloth determines the altar. So that's why we have one. It sets a nice boundary. I mean, in a pinch, you can use, I've used rocks, just made a little square, built them out of stones. I'm sure that's where how the first medicine wheels were built, which is with what's at hand. It doesn't have to be formal. But it's nice to have something pretty that you really align with to use consistently for this purpose, because it starts to hold the frequency of the purpose you've blessed it to. So a lot of our phones, like you mentioned, Robin, have these wonderful little compasses on them now. Just be mindful that the phone compass is aligned with magnetic north and not with stellar north. So some of them are GPS oriented, and I'm not sure how they translate, so that's something we're going to have to research. Because what we want to do is we want to align the altar with magnetic north, so we're cooperating with the toroidal field of the earth, which is, I think, 15 to 17 degrees. I could be wrong, don't quote me, off of stellar north. I know when I'm doing orienteering, I have to take a ruler and correct the topo maps, because the topographic maps are drawn to stellar, and my compass works on magnetic. So there is a slight difference because of the precession of equinoxes from stellar north to magnetic north. Plus, magnetic north shifts quite a lot right now. It's not stable, but we want to be aligned with magnetic north at any given time so that we're aligned with the toroidal field of the earth, because that's what's empowering our ceremony in an earth-based practice like we're starting out with on this one. So you take the altar and you can choose whether you want one of the corners to face north or if you want the flat side to face north. If I have an altar cloth that has a very clear pattern where there's a top and a bottom, well then I'll face the top, if you will, towards north. And that's traditionally the way a map is set up as well. So it just helps us align with these ways things are done so we aren't recreating the wheel every time. Which brings us to talk. Go right ahead.
If I can interrupt you from Dr. Jim. Is true north stellar north? Are true north and stellar north the same?
I hesitate to say. I think it is, but I could be wrong. I know they use stellar north on the topographical maps, and then you have to alter that for magnetic north, but I'm not quite sure which one they use as true north. And of course, true north is a misnomer because it's a moving target, whether it's stellar or magnetic. Because of the precession of equinoxes, our North Pole, right now it points to Polaris, but other times in the ages it points to a totally different star or stars. So, and electromagnetic is shifting all the time too. But I know there's this term, true north, and boy, I'm not positive which one it is. We'd have to research that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the 7 directions. Now, every tradition has a little different way of looking at the directions. Some say 4, some say 5, some say 7, but really they're dancing with pretty much the same thing. So say, for instance, the ones that say 5, they have north, east, south, west, and center. But center also includes up and down. So there's your 7. So I like to work with the 7 because it represents all of those elements, even though they are included in other traditions. I think breaking them out nice and clearly for our people is good. So my Lakota teacher taught me 7 directions. The Celts tend to use 7 directions in most of their practices. So we'll dance with those. Again, the 7 directions are east, south, west, north, center or heart or neutrality or unity, up as in the stars, down as in the earth. So on our altar, what we use to represent the 7 directions is east is yellow, whether it's a yellow patch of cloth or a yellow stone. South is red. West is black, and north is white. Now, there is many different ways to represent in many different colors as there are traditions. This is just the one I journeyed for and we use for the school. And when I asked why are these the colors that I received to use for the school, I was told because they honor also the 4 nations. The yellow people, the red people, the black people, and the white people. And so every time I set an altar, I'm setting representation for unity of the nations, which I really like. That really aligns with the way I like to think and be. So like I said, these can be anything, and once, if you decide to study with me further or whatever else and learn to journey, then how I teach people to do this is they journey for what color represents that direction for them based on what they're doing with the ceremony. So it can get much more refined. For now, this is nice and general, so that's what we'll use. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is there is no right or wrong. There are ways that have been used for generations and therefore carry more power, and you're not working against the natural law to do it. East is sunrise, and that's why I see it as yellow. South is passion, fire, everlight, summer, red. West is the unconscious, the mysterious, going deep, going into the cave, and that's why it's black to me. And north, of course, is snow, the mental realm, ancestors, elders, and we'll get deeper into this as we go on today. So those are why we use those colors. It's how they align with us for this class. Then the candle holder represents the feminine, the bowl. Okay, so center is represented by the candle and the candle holder. The candle holder is the feminine or the bowl, and the candle itself is the masculine. And in the Lakota tradition, they when they put a pipe together, it's part of the ceremony. They're putting the feminine bowl and placing the stem to it and bringing back the balance of masculine and feminine for ceremony. Beautiful ceremony. So the 4 elements and the medicine wheel. Again, the 4 elements for the medicine wheel are earth, fire, water, and air. And they also are placed in different places on the medicine wheel based by different traditions. But for our purposes, we begin in the east, and in the east we have the element of earth, the beginning, the foundation. And then I said like south is passion, fire, and that's of course where the fire is located, the element of fire. In the west we have the unconscious or the emotional realm, and that's where we put water. And then north is air or wind, and that's how we're going to state the elements for our purposes. What I love about the medicine wheel is it has so many different facets to it. It's so multidimensional, and yet they all work together to perfection. And that's, I think, the way the shamanic way is. It's like, because we're working with natural law builds upon itself, cooperates within itself, and follows itself. And so it just becomes very multidimensional. I've always been fascinated by it. So how we represent the 4 elements on the altar is through the earthen bowl, represents earth. The water in the bowl, of course, stands for water. The air around the candle is air, and the fire that we light the candle with is the element of fire. So that's why we use those objects on the altar. Some of them cross-dress. In other words, the candle holding the candle represent up and down. They also represent center. They also represent masculine and feminine. But then again, they also hold some of the elements. So how do we set the altar? Well, like I said, what I like to do is have my sage burning to the side, and I pick up my altar clock, and I run it through the sage, and then I have my compass, unless I've got the room already oriented and I know exactly where everything is, and I use the compass to set the altar clock. Okay? And then I say, I bless you, earth. I bless you, the foundation. All right? So I've stated the purpose for the altar clock. Or thank you for being the earth for me. Thank you for holding the foundation. Then the next thing I do is I will run the candle holder across the sage and set it in the center, and I say, I bless you, feminine. I run the candle through the sage, and I put it in the center. And as I put it, as I hold it above the center, I say, I bless you, the masculine. And as I put it in the center, I said, I bless you as a sacred marriage, as unity, and as center. Okay? So that's through my intent and through my words, setting center in the altar. And the next, I'll run the Yellowstone through the altar, through the sage, and I'll hold it up to the east, and I say, bless you, east, and then I put it in the east direction. I take the red red article, whichever you've chosen, for the south, and I do the same thing. I hold it to the direction of the south after I run it through the sage, and then I place it on the altar. I bless you, south. Same thing with the north, with the west, and the same thing with the north. So what I would like to do at this point is to take a little space and time, and everybody get their sage going. And you don't have to have a bonfire. Just a little smoke is good. Sometimes I get carried away. Great. Oh, there you go. She's serious. Job of the hunt.
It smells so good.
Isn't it wonderful? Yeah. So then, of course, you run your altar cloth through the sage and place it on the tabletop in front of you or wherever you decide to set up your altar. Use your compass to direct it to the north. So for those of you that may be unfamiliar with the compass, all you do is you turn the compass until the red arrow sits in the red slot on the bottom of the compass. So the floating arrow lines up with the red slot. You point the red, if you have a dial, you point the red slot towards the red arrow on the base, and then you simply turn the compass itself physically until the two line up, the floating red dial and the red line. Then that determines north of the top of your altar. Perfect. So next, let's take our candle holder, run it through the sage, and as we place it in the center of our altar, say, I bless you, the feminine. Perfect. Now let's take our candle and run it through the sage. And as we hold it above the candle holder, we say, I bless you, the masculine. And then as we set it in the candle holder, we say, I bless you, the sacred marriage and center.
Sacred direction center.
Very nice. Now take your east stone or cloth, the yellow, and look on your compass. Which direction is east? So east is directly right of north, going clockwise. And we're going to set the altar going clockwise because we're building power. East is sunrise, the beginning, so we start with the direction east. We run our east stone through the sage, and we hold it into the direction of east before we place it on the altar and say, I bless you, east. You'll notice in this picture, even though the thing's turned sideways, that these are buffalo that I'm using, and so I have them facing inward, so their feet are in, and their heads are going in a clockwise direction. So I'm using the shape of the object to also establish that clockwise direction of building energy. Next, we take the red one, and the next spot on the medicine wheel around clockwise from east is south. So we run the red piece through the south and face it to the south before placing it on the altar, saying, I bless you, south. Excellent. Now the black one is going to be for the west. Again, the west is the next position, clockwise around the altar. Run it through the sage, hold it to the west direction, and set it on the altar, and state, I bless you, west. The north, of course, to go top of our altar. You take the white piece, run it through the sage, hold it up towards the north, and put it on the altar saying, I bless you, north. Perfect. Now we take our earthen bowl and we run it through the sage. And we hold it up and we say, I bless you, earth. Then we take our pitcher of water and we pour water into the bowl. Doesn't take a whole bunch. A little bit of water into the bowl. Perfect. Now, here's how we bless the water. We hold it in front of us and we look in the water. We go, I bless you in the name of the mother. And then we turn the bowl a full circle. We look back in the water and we say, I bless you in the name of the Father. And we turn the bowl a full circle. We look back in the water and we say, I bless you in the name of the Spirit that moves through all things. And we turn the bowl full circle. Now this is the fun part. You look back in the water and you say hello and you wait to feel the greeting come back at you. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. And then you set it in the west. Now depending on what we're doing, it can be in the direct west, it can be in the southwest, or it can be in the northwest on your altar. Just put it wherever you feel prompted to say, or wherever it fits. And so there you have your basic altar. However, it's just sitting there idling. It's not doing anything actively yet.
We have a question, the full circle on turning the bowl. Was that to be clockwise?
Yes, thank you very much. Absolutely, it's supposed to be clockwise for what we're doing today. Yes. Was everybody able to feel that response come back from the water to your face?
Yes, in the bottom of my bowl, I've got flowers that are in the earthen bowl, but it's painted.
Oh, how
so
beautiful.
They were like smiling.
Oh, how beautiful. Yeah. And a good experiment to do is to take a glass of water and to taste it and then to do this ceremony and bless it, and then taste it again. And it's amazing the difference in the taste of the water. So this is the principle behind blessing our food before we eat it and giving gratitude, okay? Because it literally changes the frequency of the water. So when I'm soaking hides to make sacred objects, I always bless the water before soaking, give gratitude for the water and bless it. So this practice goes really deep. It's really, really fun. Okay, so now we take our intent. Eventually, we're going to put it under the candle. So that's why I have a picture of it here. So we're going to put it under the candle holder in the center of the altar. That's where we're going to put it when we're done with it. But keep it to the side for now because we're going to have use of it. So what we're doing here is we're building a map home. We're using positive or masculine, negative or feminine. We're going to add motion through the use of rhythm and intent. It's going around the neutral center, which is for your candle or your center of the masculine, feminine, the sacred marriage is. And this is what generates the power. It generates a toroidal field, as you can see in the bottom left and the top right. And it also is in alignment with the toroidal field of the planet. So it's like when you spin a top, the top spins so long as it can stay in alignment with the planet. But when other things start to interact with it, just basic flaws in the shape of the top itself, in consistency in the tabletop, then it starts to deteriorate until it falls. I like an example of this to be, if you take an egg on either of the equinoxes, right in the center of the equinox, you can stand that egg on end on a table, and it will stand there until the equinox starts to go out of center, and then it'll fall. My kids and I used to do that together all the time. And it's amazing how you have an egg there on the pointy end, and you can feel when it suddenly goes, it anchors in. And started. Equinox, that one, if you have done it, it's a fascinating thing. But again, this is what we're doing, is we're aligning with the balance and the power found on the planet. And that's what the map home is a description of. So how are we going to activate this altar, and what are we really doing when we do it? Well, what we're doing is we're taking the human auric or magnetic field and aligning it with that of the planet, okay? So that our field and our intent is being empowered and driven by the field of the planet. Within that, we're creating X points. So every place our auric field interacts with that of the planet, we create an X point. It's through those X points we can send our intent and our awareness in order to do shamanic work. It's our access point to the quantum level, quite frankly. So we're accessing the X points between the sun, the earth, toroidal fields, and our human body, driving our intent through the power found therein. We're also establishing X points between our auric field and that of all the elements that we've also placed on the altar. So that's why they're included, is we are creating and honoring a toroidal field of each of the elements that we can then access to the X points that are created where our toroidal field interfaces with them in order to shift the balance in the room based on our intent. Shift the balance, period, based on our intent. So the next thing we're going to do is then traditionally called casting a circle. That's how we call in the power in the Native American term. We call in the power to the altar. We call in the powers. We call in the spirits. Well, the spirits and the powers are always there. What we're really doing is aligning our toroidal field with that of the powers of nature in order to empower our intent. Okay? So in order to call in the powers, we have to build a toroidal field to interface with. The toroidal field we're building to interface with is actually being built on the altar itself through representing center or neutral, east, which is feminine or negative, south, which is positive or masculine, west, which is feminine or negative, north, which is masculine or positive. And then through song and rhythm, we're setting, or movement, dance, we set that in motion, which generates the power in cooperation with the way life works. So how do we focus this X-point interface through the shamanic ceremony? Well, it's through the rituals that we've used for generations and the ones that we build now. The bottom line, intention, intention, intention. Where our focus goes is driven by our intention. Our intention dictates which X point we interface with, and it's as automatic, again, as our heartbeat. We set our intent, our intention shifts our chakra system shift our frequency aligns us with the appropriate X point at any given time. That's why it's so important that our intention is clear at any given time. Now is a good time to talk about imagination. Imagination is the vehicle that we use to put our intention into the world. So when we're calling in the direction, we are imagining ourselves reaching out to the spirit of that direction. In our imagination, we see it coming to us and imbuing our altar with its frequency. In some traditions, they see the spirits of the directions as entities, or the elements as entities. So like, the north wind blowing, people in the imagination, they envision that picture of the north wind puffing up when they call in the spirit of the wind, or, in order to bring it to the altar. So whatever it needs to look like in your imagination, for now, if you just think of the direction, think of the color, think of what that direction brings, and that'll be stated in our prayers. You imagine all of those things coming into the altar through you, because it's your intent that's bringing them in, and you're directing them at the part of the altar that you're addressing at the time. But the key to all of this is imagination. It is through our imagination we wield our power and our intent into the world, into the quantum level and into the physical world. So imagination, imagination, imagination. And quite frankly, I really feel that's why imagination has been invalidated so much in all these societies, is because if you can't imagine it, you can't create it. And therefore we're left depending on the system to create for us. Also, if you can't imagine, you can't have a palette to paint the information that comes in from the quantum level, and we're subject to the system to tell us what reality is. So imagination is a huge key here. And like I said, in further classes, the use of imagination we go into much further, because it is one of the keys of shamanic practice. So calling in the directions. How do we call in the directions? Well, like I said, we envision them coming to us through our imagination. We use prayer or chant or song, just depending on the tradition. We're going to use prayer because we're all familiar with that. I have some prayers that I have sent to you guys so that you have a place to start your practice. Doesn't mean you have to be restricted to this, but it's a good foundation to start your practice from. And we'll use these prayers together today to state our intention to open the altar. So one of the things that we do when doing the directions is we stand in the direction that we're calling in. So you can stand or just shift and face, because I know you have to watch me here to see what we're doing and to hear what we're doing. But I try to, when you're calling it in on your own, as you can see, Kathy and Trixie here are facing the direction they're addressing. And they have their hands held up like this, because it's kind of how you perceive things. It kind of makes you more open to it. And you notice they each have a handy-dandy little rattle that they're using to shake, and that's providing the percussion. Okay, the percussion helps us focus our natural ability to step into the imagination and set motion into motion, and to call in the directions or to call in the frequency that each direction holds. So that's the percussion that's required. Like I said, that's the mechanical wave that then sets in motion the altar, which in turn creates the electromagnetic wave. And it's through the electromagnetic wave that we focus our intent to the X points so that we can interface with the directions, with the elements, with the earth, and have our ceremony empowered by all the above. So the prayers are going to include the elements, water, air, earth, and fire. They're going to include the directions, east, south, west, north, Mother Earth or down, Father, sky, or stars, center, heart, and unity. So again, we're working with the elements and the directions with these prayers. Also included in the prayers are the characteristics of the medicine wheel. The characteristics of the medicine wheel in the east, again, we have sunrise, innocence, childhood, beginnings, and the waxing moon. In the south, we have everlight, passion, midlife, and co-creation. In the west, we have sunset, introspection. In the south is youth. You caught that last week, and I didn't correct it, Robin. So the south is youth. So sunrise is childhood. The south is youth. And then in the west, we have a sunset, introspection, midlife, and harvest. And in the north, we have and the waning moon. And in the north, we have darkness, wisdom, elders, death, and the new moon. And the new moon is a time when we set intention for the next cycle. Okay, so new moon is a really great time to set intention. And when we come into the waxing moon, it's time to have trust that that intention will be met, to have a pure heart, to have trust, and to hold that intention to our heart. When we're in the full moon, it's a time to really stand behind the power in that intention. And when we come around to the west, it's time to harvest that intention, to see what's coming to our life. And we move into the darkness of the new moon again. It's time to give gratitude for that which we have come to us that's going to move towards what we're trying to create and set our intent for the next phase or the next intention. So these are the characteristics of the medicine wheel that we're working with. And of course, the medicine wheel is represented by our altar. So let's all grab our rattles. And we're going to shift to where we're facing the east. We're going to put our hands up, and we're going to be calling to the east, and we're going to envision it coming to us in our imagination. O Spirit of the East, please join us, sister, land of dawn, springtime, innocence, childhood, of the element earth and budding things. Please fill us in this space with your gifts and powers that we may share the wisdom of the shamanic way to best serve all concerned. Spirit of the East, please join us. At this point, I will rattle my rattle towards the east piece on the altar. So I'll like to pull it in with the rattle to the east on the altar. Next, we face the south. Spirit of the South, please join us, brother, land of midday, summer, passion, co-creation of the element fire and growing things. Please fill us in this space with your gifts and powers that we may share the wisdom of the shamanic way to best serve all concerned. Spirit of the South, please join us. And again, I rattle it towards the south piece on the altar. Now we face the west. Spirit of the West, please join us, sister, land of sunset, of fall, discernment, inward turning of the element water and of harvest. Please fill us in this space with your gifts and powers that we may share the wisdom of the shamanic way to best serve all concerned. Spirit of the West, please join us. Now we face north. Spirit of the North, please join us, brother, land of darkness, of winter, of the ancestors and elders, of wisdom and gratitude, of the element of air and transmutation. Please fill us in this space with your gifts and powers that we may share the wisdom of the shamanic way to best serve all concerned. Spirit of the North, please join us. Now, when I do a prayer to the earth, and I won't request it right now because you're going to be needing probably to look at the computer screen, but I'll literally get down on one knee and put my hand on the earth to really ground the planet. So I really feel like I'm making that connection with the earth. Spirit of the earth, please join us. Blessed Lady, Mother of my body, planet of my birth, Gaia, land of nurturance and the feminine, please fill us in this space with your gifts and powers that we may share the wisdom of the shamanic way to best serve all concerned. Spirit of the earth, please join us. Now, when calling in the sky, I'll tend to lift my arms up and look towards the sky, and I envision the whole Milky Way. So it's like this, where the Earth is very centered and grounded. The sky is this beautiful toroidal field created by the Milky Way, and that's what I'm seeing in my imagination. Spirit of the sky, please join us, land of the star nations, Father of all living things, source of guidance. Please fill us in this space with your gifts and powers, that we may share the wisdom of the shamanic way to best serve all concerned. Spirit of the sky, please join us. And both earth and sky, I'll shake the rattle and direct it at the center of the altar. Now, when I pray to center, I like to put my hand over my heart, because, of course, that's the center of our body, the center of our chakra systems, and it helps me represent that beautiful neutral balance that the toroidal field of the heart holds. But we're praying to the center of all sorts of different things. We're praying to the center of our being. We're praying to the sacred marriage that's created by the mother and the father joining together. We're praying to the center of the altar, to the center of the earth, and to the center of the galaxy. Any place that neutrality is found, we're bringing those elements together to put in the center of our altar. Spirit of center, please join us. Land of unity, unconditional love and neutrality and balance. Home of the heart, please fill us in this space with your gifts and powers, that we may share the wisdom of the shamanic way to best serve all concerned. Spirit of center, please join us. Okay, now you have to take your sacred fire stick. That's what I call these lighters. You light the candle, and you say, "It has begun." When I set space in this manner, no matter what I'm doing is enhanced and supported. And that's why it's so important that I'm paying attention to those 5 basic laws. But every class I teach, and this is a state-certified trade school of shamanic arts, it has, 380, close to 400 hours. Every class I teach is run in this ceremonial format because it creates an environment to bring through higher frequency information and to understand at a higher frequency. But it can do the same thing. Every wedding I perform, whether I do it actively, openly, because that's what the bride and groom wanted, or whether I do it subtly before the ceremony begins, before the people walk in the room, I set up this space. Every talk I give, every lecture I give, I set up this kind of space before doing it. When I sit down to write a book, every time I get ready to sit down to write the book, I set up this kind of space so the information can come through. This is one of the most powerful modalities that I teach, this and journey work. Because what this does is it sets aside the things that would get in our way, supports the things that we're trying to achieve, and brings us back into balance and grounding with the planet and the way life works. Just performing ceremony morning and evening, and that's what I'm going to recommend you do for a while, is you open your altar in the morning, you state your intent and bottom line, and then you activate your altar, you state your intent and bottom line, and then you sit there and you think of all the ways yesterday served your intent and bottom line. And you trust that today will also serve your intent and bottom line. And then when you're done, you give gratitude and you blow out the candle. At evening, you come home every night and you do the same thing. You activate the altar through calling in the directions just like we just did. You light the candle, you pull out your intent and bottom line and you read it. And you kind of meditate or think about the ways things that have come to you that might seem unrelated are actually serving your bottom line, or the things that are coming in your face that are showing you what you need to clear in order to achieve your intent and bottom line. If need be, you make slight adjustments to your bottom line and intent. Then you fold them, put it back underneath the candle, give gratitude, and say it is ended, and blow out the candle. This practice brings you back into center twice a day, every day of your life, and everything in your life starts to work more smoothly, more consciously, and more profoundly. So this is a simple, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. It's simpler than brushing your teeth. Now, I have to reset my altar every day because my cats just feel very motivated to rearrange it for me during the day, so I have to reset it every day. Some people, some of you are oriented Oriental traditions will actually have an little altar table or altar tray that they set up when they're not using it, then they sit down and put it on their meditation table. There's all sorts of different ways, and there's no right way or wrong way. But if you start following this practice, you're going to be amazed, and particularly if you keep a journal where you've written your intent and bottom line, and then you journal each day. What served? What didn't? What's in my face to be cleared? How do I want to rearrange my intent and bottom line? After a while, you'll look at it and go, oh my goodness, these things are coming into fruition. And this seemingly unrelated thing really came to serve the next step of my process, to serve me clearing what I need to clear to make what I want to make, or to serve me as a constituent part of what I'm trying to create. And if you journal it, you start stepping out of that place of we don't use our power because we feel powerless. Because here it is, you're mapping it. There's proof positive that this stuff really works and that you're really working it. So I can't encourage you enough, even if you just try it for a month. Try it. You'll like it. So it has begun. So at this point, if everyone would take their piece of paper and read to yourself your bottom line. Go ahead and say it out loud. And once you've done that, if you then also state out loud your intent. Once you've done that, carefully and lovingly fold the paper small enough and flat enough to fit underneath your candle holder. Hold it to your heart and say, it is so. Then place it underneath your candle holder and replace your candle holder over the top. Now say, activate and actuate. Perfect. Now we're going to move from our personal intent to a universal intent. And if what I say is something that, because it's difficult for us to communicate readily, so if what I'm stating is not something you're in alignment with, just go ahead and step back, say you're not participating. But the universal intent is that the balance created by this ceremony can be sent into the world and made available for the planet and those on her who wish to attain balance at this time as we transcend from the fourth into the fifth world. Close your eyes. See that balance coming in your imagination. Breathe in. Feel it spinning your toroidal field. Breathe out into the toroidal field of the planet. Breathe in, watching it spin your toroidal field. Breathe out into the toroidal field of the planet. Breathe in, envision it spinning the toroidal field of your altar. Breathe out into the toroidal field of the planet. Breathe in, while spinning the toroidal field of your altar. Breathe out to the toroidal field of the planet. Now this time when you breathe in, you're going to watch it spin the toroidal field that we have all created in common. So it's a larger one. So like all of our personal toroidal fields, the toroidal fields of our altar have come together to create one of common intent. So we breathe in and we watch it spin our common toroidal field. We breathe out and we watch that larger toroidal field feed it to the planet. We breathe in, we watch our combined toroidal field expand, breathe out, and we breathe it to the planet. And we say, it is so. Let's talk a little bit about working your altar. Now you have that little object that I said that's going to represent your intent and bottom line. Now the beauty about working an altar is you don't have to be in the new moon, you don't have to be in springtime in order to draw on the power of those very things. When we were setting our intent, we were working with the power of the new moon. Now we're going to start to actuate our intent by placing it in the place of beginnings in the springtime. So you notice I have a little chess piece here that I've placed in the springtime underneath a little chicken on the altar. So place your article in the east. First run it through the sage and say, I bless you, and then state whatever your intent is. So I bless you to represent my intent to write a book. And then you set it down on the east of your altar and say, it has begun. Now, I would invite you each day, as you're working with your altar, to look at what's coming to your life, where you are in the manifestation process, what's working out for you, and you'll kind of start to get a feel of where you are. So say I've started writing my book, and heck, I'm almost halfway through it. But I really need a little motivation. It just needs to have more fire behind it, okay? I'm not in the beginnings anymore, but I haven't completed it either. So it's probably time to start walking my little monopoly piece, if you will, towards the south, because now we're moving into the passion, the fire, the movement of this project. And you'll start getting a real feel for where you are. Then the time comes when I've got the book written, okay, and I'm sending it into my editor. I'm sending it into my publisher. We're going to work it back and forth to edit it. I might want to put that in the land of harvest, into the West, because there's sorting, discernment, what doesn't serve here, what does serve here, what serves the next stage of our process. That's what we do when we bring in harvest. We go into the root cellar. We get rid of the old stuff that was from last year that's starting to rot. We put it in the compost to create something for next year, and then we put our new harvest in the West, okay? When that book hits the press and comes out into the public, that's when the article belongs, my little monopoly piece belongs in the North. And that's when the prayers of gratitude, on top of the prayers of gratitude I give every day, are put out there. Because if you don't give gratitude for it, you never really receive it. You never really own it. You're just thinking about the next thing you want to do or create, and you're forever unfulfilled. So to give it its own power, we bless it into the North. We turn it loose and give it a life of its own. And then we just sit there for a while between the North and East before we decide next. So this is how you work your altar, and this is also how you can have more than one project going at once. So say, for instance, I have a workbook, actually, that's in the North right now, okay? It's going to go to press. But I also have the book that is next to follow, So We're Still Here Now What, the one called These and Greater Things. I'm in the process of writing it. So that little cursor, if you will, or monopoly piece is sitting in the South right now. So, because I started it, you know, I've already started it. It's already in process, but now I'm really working it. And so that goes in the South. So I'm working more than one thing on my altar at once. And this is how you can keep your focus on any one thing, and at the same time focus on more than one thing at once. At this point, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions yet. I think everybody has just been really engaged in this process, which is so beautiful. And I had this feeling when you were talking about our combined toroidal fields. I just had this vision because we have together here from all across the United States East and West Coast, North and South. We have the East and West Coast of Canada. We have the North and South of Australia, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, Scotland, and Spain. So it felt like a beautiful, big toroidal field impacting the Earth.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And we think ourselves powerless. That's laughable.
Yeah.
So once we're done, at the end of every day, when you're closing your altar, you know you've started your altar when you came home from work, and you've done your this process, and then when you're getting ready to close your altar, of course we have to visit the North and we have to give gratitude. So the prayer of gratitude is you release the spirits. Spirits, I thank you for your surrounds, your protection, your enfoldment, and your guidance, and I now release you. Those of you that wish to stay and further protect and guide me are much welcome and greatly appreciated. Then we deactivate our altar by saying it is ended. The power of gratitude. I love this little sign I found. It's not happiness that brings us gratitude. It's gratitude that brings us happiness. I love that one. Deactivate the altar by blowing out your candle and saying it is ended. Now I have to give you this reminder. Remember that everywhere we're not in conscious agreement with that which we intend will be pressured. When confronted with this pressure, we must do one of three things. Heal the restriction in ourselves that stands between us and our intention, change our intent or bottom line, or be cast kicking and screaming into the winds of change. That's why it's so important to revisit your altar morning and evening and tweak it, refine it. Shift your intent and bottom line if things aren't working, or if they're working too well too fast. Of course, there's a suggested reading. I've got a lot about this in there. Pathway Shamanic Arts School. We're a Colorado State Certified Occupational School of Shamanic Arts. And that means we've gone through a rigorous certification program that ensures that founder, director, and instructors have the qualifications to teach the shamanic arts. In addition, the students' interests are guarded from bonded tuition and certified curriculum and refund policies. The catalogs in all Pathway certified programs, including the online classes, are approved and on file with the State of Colorado Division of Private Occupational Schools. And this ensures consistency and quality of the classes. If you find you're cast in the winds of change and need shamanic help, we have long-distance program. As you all know, I've been working with some of you. It's been such a blessing. And it's time for that wonderful song. You ready?
Yes, thank you.
So the song we're going to work with is Piliama. Piliama means thank you in Lakota.
Piliama ya yelo, Piliama ya yelo, Piliama ya yelo, Piliama ya yelo. Piliama ya yelo, Piliama ya yelo, Piliama ya yelo, Piliama ya yelo. Thank you for the sun that shines. Thank you for the moon at night. Thank you for the truth I seek. Thank you for the chance to be Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow. Thank you for our Mother Earth. Thank you for our rebirth. Thank you for this life we live. Thank you for the love you give. Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow. If we should move far apart, you remain here in my heart. If you want me to be near, call my name and I am here. Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow, Pilamaya yellow. You are a song. You are a song. You are a song so light and clear. You are a song. You are a song for all to hear. Sing your song. Sing your song. Sing your song so sweet and clear. Sing your song. Sing your song. Sing your song for all to hear.
Thank you all for being here, for joining me in this, and for offering your beautiful song into the symphony of the world. Piliama.